So today we're going to talk about Kambine. It's a marketplace that I've put together because I've seen a serious need or a lack of this kind of service in the marketplace, especially for plastics. Um, so we've all seen the Graduate. There's a great future in plastics. It stood true in 1967, and I still think it stands true today. I mean, obviously, the industry is getting hammered in the news with the environment and recycling. So this is part initiative to help address that. If we can lower some of the scrap or some of the material that's getting thrown away to our landfills by creating open commerce and a strong network within the industry, I think this will help things get moving in the right direction. So why should you listen to me for maybe the next 10 or 15 minutes? My name's Stephen Fage. I was a robotics electrical engineer, both for Yushin, which is a company that operates in the plastics industry, as well as Canon, building big manufacturing lines. I'm master molder certified with RJG. They have a very good name in the industry and have been doing equipment sales since 2012. So I've been around for a little bit, certainly not as long as many of you in the industry, but being on the equipment sales side, I've come to understand a lot of your challenges when it comes to buying and selling equipment, both new and used, as well as your material. So today we're going to be focused on two areas of the plastics business. One is used equipment, and the other is overstock materials, whether it's runners left over from your process or it's regrind left over from processing your runners, or even virgin material. For a lot of custom molders, they're buying very specific virgin materials for a contract, let's say for a very specific part, a two-shot iPhone case or whatever it might be. But if that contract is over, they've completed it, shipped all the parts, but then they have material left over. Sometimes it's not quite in spec for other parts that they're running. So they could have anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 pounds of very specific virgin sitting in their shop. They don't want to throw it away because they spent money on it, but they're not quite sure what to do with it. So the issue with equipment is obviously some people have a lot of used equipment that's not necessarily being taken advantage of, and it's taking up valuable space. I don't need to tell anyone here the value of their space, but if you're to do a calculation, you could certainly you could assign a value to every square inch of your plant where there should be a machine giving you money. And also a lot of money is tied up in your used equipment. You bought it, it worked for you, and now if it's not quite producing, that's capital that's tied up that could be put into new equipment or automation, which could save you on labor and quality. Again, not anything new to you, but I want to make it obvious. I want to kind of put that on the table because I feel that some people don't think about all the money that's tied up because they don't have easy enough options for offloading their used equipment. And we're going to talk about that as we go through this. So don't panic. All right, this isn't serious. There are solutions here. So now what? I mean, trying to run around the state of Florida and work with plastics manufacturers, I often run into this. If they're trying to offload used equipment, one of the questions I get asked is, hey, can the vendor buy this back? If I buy a new machine from you, will you buy the old one from me? And try to say it as nicely as possible, but it's pretty simple. The vendors or the OEMs are not in the business of dealing with or managing used equipment. So if they were to buy it back from you, what are they going to do with it? There's really no strong network for them to offload it. They can't really resell it because their business is selling new equipment. So that's always tough. Or the second question I get is they ask me, hey, what's your network like? Can you find someone to buy this used piece of equipment from me, so we can get this deal going, so I can, X, Y, Z. And that's really dependent on my network or the other reps network, all across the country. You're really depending on their email chains, their phone calls. It's quite an inefficient process. And then the third is dealing with a broker. This can kind of create a whole slew of issues back and forth, time spent in the famous call for a quote. I've heard many of you share your frustrations with simply just wanting a price on a used piece of equipment that they've seen listed online. and there's no prices. So you have to call them. It's the back and forth. It's quite a runaround and very time consuming. Now, looking on the material side, there's two things here. There's what do we do with our runners and what do we do with our regrind? Runners, many of you have boxes of runners sitting around your plant because you maybe don't have the time to grind it down and process it, or some of you don't quite have the proper equipment. You don't have a large enough grinder, or you don't have a grinder available to do anything with those. So those runners just sit there because we all know that's money that's tied up. You don't want to throw it away, but you don't really know what to do with it. But let's say you can process it and you grind it down to regrind or down to your flake, but then you don't know what to do with it. There's no one around to buy it, so it just sits there. So now what? You call your neighbor. I know a lot of you maybe know someone down the street who's processing a similar spec. You can send them the regrind if depending on what they're making, if they can use it. Or you ask a broker. That's kind of like asking a new equipment vendor to buy the equipment back, going to a broker who's trying to sell you brand new material, virgin material, to ask them to buy regrind. That can always be tough, and that's a lot of chasing. But you know what? Honestly, I've heard from quite a few of you, many of you just throw it away because you don't have the time, nor are you in the business of managing regrind. So oftentimes it just gets thrown away on a monthly basis. So that's money that you're throwing out the door. So what I'm trying to do here is to help you capture that money back in a fast, efficient way. So potential solutions. So I scoured the internet, and in my dealings with both sides of the table, dealing with customers and then dealing with the rep vendor broker network, there are some options, but they are quite limited. We'll go over those right now. So when looking at the material side, if you simply just do a Google search, you can find quite a few brokers out there. Put a couple up here, but I wanted to kind of explain the different types of networks that are out there. So broker networks, everyone's very familiar with that. You're selling them your material, or you're buying your material from them. They're kind of a central location, but it's not an open marketplace. They're controlling the pricing. They're controlling the availability. It's not very open. Now, Scrappo is a closed market. So you can buy and sell material through their network, but if you look at the screenshot here, you can't even view a listing. You can't see the information or the pricing on a given listing here without actually joining their network. You have to be in their network to see it. And the limitation on that, simply put, is if you can't see it without logging in, neither can Google. So if you spend your time creating a listing with them and putting your material on their marketplace, only their network is going to see it. So your exposure is limited to the size of their network. So it's quite limiting. And then eBay, everyone's very familiar with this. I don't need to talk too much about that. It's an open market, but it has its own inherent list of issues. Now on the equipment side, again, there are no shortage of brokers. Some you may be familiar with Metalworks, quite a large company. But again, the issue with that, it's not transactional based. You have to submit your information, then they create the listing for you. They control the pricing. You're probably not going to get exactly what your equipment is worth. They have to knock it down a bit to cover their overhead fees, their storage fees, all things included. eBay, they also sell equipment. Everyone's familiar with eBay, but even Craigslist. Some people have tried. I mean, if you see the screenshot there, I did a search for injection molding machines. Nothing came up. So I wanted to put it on here because some people may be saying, well, what about Craigslist? It doesn't look like a viable option. And there are many, 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 many more brokers. Arlington, you all may be familiar with this, Blades, reputable companies, but it's the broker model. They control the pricing, they control the inventory. It's really up to them and how they feel. They're kind of setting the market. But then, I included the two at the bottom. You've got ThomasNet, it's a directory. Maybe you could see who's around, at least if you're trying to offload, a couple Gaylords of regrind and you don't know who's in your neighborhood. ThomasNet might be a viable option just to see who's down the street, and then you can start making phone calls. But again, it's a very manual process. You can't perform transactions on a directory. And then LinkedIn. Sure, we're all connected. There are a lot of groups on LinkedIn, but you can't really perform transactions. It would be good to share your listing link on there. We'll get into that later, but it's really not transactional based. It's a lot of chasing. It's very much a manual process. So as you can see, this is kind of what the market is made up of, and it's mostly controlled by brokers. There are few closed markets, but as we discussed, you're limited to that closed marketplace in itself. So Google can't see those listings. So you're going to be investing a lot of time into a closed loop system. eBay is the only open marketplace that I have seen. Please let me know if you see anything else, but that has its own inherent list of issues. It's not specifically designed for our industry, so the search functions are pretty limited, but we can go into that later. And then directories and social networks, you get the rest. So this brings us to the Kambine marketplace, trying to address the gap in the market. It is an open marketplace that you control. So what we wanted to do is give you the power back. You can create your own listing. You set your own pricing. And then if you see a listing that you like, you are free to make an offer. So all the power goes into your hands, processor to processor. So how do we compare? So Craigslist, I put that up there. I'm not sure it's even a contender, but I want to kind of include it because it's just been around forever. eBay, obviously an open marketplace, but it is missing a lot of functions that we've built into Kambine. For one, when you go to create a listing on eBay, they give you a title box and a description box. So optimizing that listing is entirely up to you. And I know many of you are expert processors, but you might not be expert listing creators in such a way so that Google will find your listing. So we've set up a wizard on Kambine. So when you create a listing, it creates the actual listing for you once you just answer a few questions. We also have a material database in there. So when you're listing regrind, you can just click drop, and add all the names to it. So mobile friendly, it works very well. Walk around your shop with your phone in your hand, start taking pictures, creating listings for free. We do the work for you, answer a couple questions, and Kambine creates the listing optimized already. It's ready for Google. What's important here is we do not get paid until your listing is sold. So the system is designed to really optimize the listing and make it very friendly with Google so you get more exposure. It's basically your own personal salesman. You don't have to do a lot of the work once you create the listing. Coming soon, this is something that the other marketplaces do not have, most certainly do not have, is we have a way to optimize each of your listings with Google Ads, so you are more likely to show up in top Google searches. So this is basically, it's your own personal sales system. So if you have a couple more minutes, I'd like to just show you the site real quickly. This is all designed to be very quick because I know you're all very familiar with the industry. So if you have a couple minutes, I'm just going to switch right over to that. So here is the site. Everyone's still with me? Can someone give me a high sign in the chat? Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. So still going here. Here's the site. I mean, I'm not going to walk you through the design. It's pretty straightforward. But what I wanted to do here was to create a listing just to show you how easy this is. So at the top here, we just hit create listing. So there's two options. There's material and then there's equipment. We're going to click on equipment, walk you right through this. And let's say we're going to list a chiller. Now, all these questions are going to change for you as this progresses. Let's do molding machine. It's more fun. So molding machine, select the brand. We're going to sell a Toyo. Model number is 1234, year manufactured, 1990. It is under power and running. So what we did was looked at over the years, 200,000. Over the years, we were doing the dance with a lot of processors, and they would say, hey, I got this old Sumitomo, help me sell it. It's a 200-ton molding machine with this shot size and that distance, tie bars, like all these very specific things that allow other people to buy a machine because they all have molds and the mold needs to fit in the machine. They need to have a certain shot size. So the frustration came from, doing the dance, finding this used piece of equipment, trying to sell it. You may find a buyer, but then at the last minute, oh, the shot size is too big or too small. So you'd get so close to the end and then the alignment one, it just wouldn't line up. And obviously you can't make changes to used equipment. It's not worth it. So this guide, this wizard, asks all those questions up front. So the listing is created so that it's very easy to purchase. So next step is more of the specific details. So again, you know, like what's the shot size, what's the screw type, general purpose, the 200-ton, electric, horizontal. You know, we go through all this, but this is all very helpful. But I want you to see, don't judge me on my numbers here. We're just making this really quick. But these are all numbers. These are all items that make it very easy for someone to purchase. Let's say $25,000. There's going to be one of those. Next. And then we'll upload a picture. And again, I want to stress this all works very well with, we're going to put Brad up there. Brad works for Toyo, so that's very relevant. So we're going to put his face up there. If you have additional images, you just put them right here. The goal with this demo is to be very quick. So it puts all this information for you, puts it all together for you, excuse me. Now once we click next, agree to our terms. And then once this gets listed, you will see how it kind of builds it all together for you. Wonderful. So now we're going to go to my live listings. If that worked, I hope it did. If it didn't, you know, maybe it'll take a second. There we go. Wonderful. So here's our new listing. So this is my, don't mind this, you know, we're still building it. I'm not ashamed. Here are the listings that me as a vendor, I have created. So this is my Stephen Page test store. So it's kind of like an Etsy shop, you know, not to compare to Etsy, but you create your own listings, you have your own storefront. So now when we look at this listing, here it built it all for you. So now it's very user-friendly as far as, you know, if you're a user, you know, the value in investing time into a marketplace is its ability to sell your product, obviously, right? So it needs to be very friendly. So instead of having to go through and create this whole page, it does it for you. Nice quick description. Here's the price. If somebody wants to make an offer, hey, I want one of those. I don't want to give you $25 for it. I want to give you 24, and I could submit that to you and get that process going. So it really works very well. You know exactly the size, the details. Will my mold fit into this? You know, you can see here's another listing from our buddy Adam at Reimer & Reimer down in Sarasota. You know, we were on Johnny on the spot, did this with his phone to prove it to you. You know, this is something we fixed in the meantime, but this was taken right from his phone. He took the pictures, uploaded it, built it right while he was standing there. So again, we're trying to keep the market open, allow you processors to connect with other processors. You set the pricing, both on listing and offering. You don't have to call for a quote. You don't have to call for a price. You don't have to deal with anybody. It's all for you guys. So that's really it. Again, wanted to make this very awesome, 12:20. Thank you so much for hanging in this long. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them, whether it's on chat or with your mic. So I believe everybody is unmuted. So if there are any questions, when does it go live? Thank you for asking. So it's live right now. So we've turned it live regardless of the fact that it's a work in progress. So it absolutely works. We've got a couple processors in the area who have created accounts. So as you can see, John Rover, Adam Reimer, to name new names, because I really appreciate their support. But this is an actual dryer right here from Micro. This is actual equipment that Micro's trying to sell. Adam's got a unit up there right here. So it actually works now. It's just a matter of, yes, thank you for stopping me. USA only, and we're toting that because eBay is open to international, Scrappo is open to international, and as we're all familiar, while that may sound cool, there's all kinds of issues with that. It's really hard for quality control. One thing I want to note with Kambine is all vendors, so we're calling you the vendor now because you vend your own products, your own material, you are all vetted by an EIN number. It is absolutely required for you to enter your EIN number in order to sell any of your listings so that we're sure that you are a bona fide US company. The goal with this marketplace is to instill trust and a safe experience. So that is at least our first step to doing that. Not anybody can sign up. We want to make sure we don't have any disgruntled individuals stealing equipment from their businesses, trying to hawk it on Kambine. So that is the first step. Yes, US companies only, EIN number is required because this is the real deal. We're not just letting anybody do anything. If you are so inclined, if I may ask for your help, because it's going to take a village, this is the landing page. This is our information page on what Kambine is, how does it compare, and why should you invest your time into it. It's very easy for people to sign up, and we need eyeballs. So if you're willing to share, this is the link right here. I'd really appreciate it. But past that, we're ready to rock and roll.